1 Samuel chapter 19. And Saul speaks to his son Jonathan and to all his servants to put David to death. And Jonathan, son of Saul, delighted in David exceedingly. And Jonathan declares it to David, saying, My father Saul is seeking to put you to death. And now, please take heed in the morning, and you have abided in a secret place and been hidden. And I go out and have stood by the side of my father in the field where you are. And I speak to my father and have seen what is coming, and have declared it to you. And Jonathan speaks good of David to his father Saul, and says to him, Do not let the king sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works are very good for you. Indeed, he puts his life in his hand, and strikes the Philistine. And Yahweh works a great salvation for all Israel. You have seen and rejoice. And why do you sin against innocent blood, to put David to death for nothing? And Saul listens to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swears, Yahweh lives, he does not die. And Jonathan calls for David, and Jonathan declares all these words to him. And Jonathan brings in David to Saul, and he is before him as before. And there adds to be war, and David goes out and fights against the Philistines, and strikes among them with a great striking, and they flee from his face. And a spirit of sadness from Yahweh is to Saul, and he is sitting in his house, and his javelin is in his hand, and David is playing with the hand, and Saul seeks to strike with the javelin through David and through the wall. And he frees himself from the presence of Saul, and he strikes the javelin through the wall, and David has fled, and escapes during that night. And Saul sends messengers to the house of David to watch him, and to put him to death in the morning. And his wife Michal declares it to David, saying, If you are not delivering your life tonight, tomorrow you are put to death. And Michal causes David to go down through the window, and he goes on and flees and escapes. And Michal takes the teraphim and lays it on the bed, and she has put the mattress of goat's hair for his pillows, and covers it with a garment. And Saul sends messengers to David, and she says, He is sick. And Saul sends the messengers to see David, saying, Bring him up in the bed to me in order to put him to death. And the messengers come in, and behold, the teraphim are on the bed, and the mattress of goat's hair for his pillows. And Saul says to Michal, Why have you thus deceived me, that you send my enemy away, and he escapes? And Michal says to Saul, He said to me, Send me away. Why do I put you to death? And David has fled and escapes, and comes to Samuel at Ramath, and declares to him all that Saul has done to him. And he goes, he and Samuel, and they dwell in Naioth. And it is declared to Saul, saying, Behold, David is in Naioth and Ramah. And Saul sends messengers to take David, and they see the assembly of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing, set over them. And the Spirit of God is on Saul's messengers, and they prophesy, they also. And they declare it to Saul, and he sends other messengers, and they prophesy, they also. And Saul adds to send messengers a third time, and they prophesy, they also. And he goes, he also to Ramath, and comes to the great well which is in Sechu, and asks and says, Where are Samuel and David? And one says, Behold, in Naioth in Ramah. And he goes there to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God is on him also, and he goes going on, and he prophesies until his coming to Naioth in Ramah. And he strips off him also his garments, and prophesies, he also, before Samuel, and falls down naked all that day and all the night. Therefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets?